Hey, you guys, I'm Audra Morgan, Eye of the Storm, and I am here to plead on behalf of the Robinson Lopez family to free Malaika and Xayah Robinson from captivity. They have been abducted by the child trafficking network in San Diego County known as Child and Family Wellbeing. This was an active attempt, along with Norma Olivares, to work together, conspiring to get the mother to come back so that they could abduct the children. See, this case started because the family was arguing. They were not having a stable living environment. They were moving from hotel to hotel. The mother had just had two children. She had postpartum and was trying to get help for that. And so they would have arguments. Who doesn't? Unfortunately, one day the police got called, which involved social workers to come. And they came to the hotel and signed the parents up for some, services, parenting classes and domestic violence classes. But at no point were they trying to get them into stable housing, to get her help for the postpartum so that they wouldn't have such heightened arguments. So as time went on and they were doing these classes and going through all of this stuff, at no point did the county ever intend to take the girls. In fact, Judge Michael Poulos actually wound up granting the mother to go to live in Mexico, Tijuana, Mexico, where her family was. She's actually was adopted from Tijuana into the United States by Norma Olivares' family. And when she was told that she could go back to Mexico, she was unable to actually get in touch with her family in Mexico. So she was speaking with a friend in St. Louis, Missouri, and she said that she could come and stay with her and get back on her feet. So that's what she did. She moved and took the girls and went to Missouri. As soon as she did that, they said that she had kidnapped the girls and they were actively looking for her, telling her that there was a warrant, but they were telling her that the Border Patrol, the U.S. Marshals, and the police were actively looking for her. In fact, the social workers reached out to Missouri DSS, Department of Social Services, and asked them to actively get involved and help them to get the girls. They refused, as they said that they had determined that there was no abuse or neglect, so they were not going to get involved. And it wasn't until a couple of months later when Norma Olivares reached out to Evelyn Lopez, the mother, on Facebook after a 12-year estrangement, was just kind of looking to see how she was and where she was. And when she realized that she wasn't in San Diego and that she was in St. Louis, Missouri, she decided like a month or so later that she was going to come out and visit. And during that visit, she took the girls and Evelyn to do a photo shoot, saying that she wanted them to have memories, which is very interesting in hindsight. They stayed, enjoyed their time, and it wasn't until a few months later, which would be in May, that Norma came back out. And at that time is when she informed Evelyn Lopez that she had intercepted a letter from her at her grandmother's house, the Norma's mother, and it was addressed to Evelyn's adopted parents. Norma wound up opening the letter, and it was from Child and Family Wellbeing, talking about taking the girls and if it was necessary for them to be separated. So Norma had actually gotten in touch with the social workers and was actively working with them to get Evelyn to come back. So when she came out in May, she wound up working to convince her that it was in her best interest to come back to San Diego, get the warrant taken care of, and figure out how she can continue to keep the girls. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. When she got back, they actively took her in. She turned herself in because they said they could not take the warrant away, which they totally could have, and they chose not to. They wound up, she said that she wanted to turn herself in so that the girls would not have to see it. So she did that. And immediately the girls were put into Norma's care. They gave her an immediate RFA approval without having to do any of the classes or anything like that, and put the girls into her care. It was at that time that the mother was only able to not live with the girls, but she could go see them as much as she wanted during the day and as much as Norma would allow. It was a little bit later that Evelyn had started talking to the paternal grandfather, and he was in the process of getting RFA approved himself to be able to foster the girls. And she had let the social workers know that she wanted the girls to go live with Ricky Robinson. When Norma found out, she was very upset, kicked Evelyn out, turned off her phone, and said that she could no longer visit the girls, that she would have to do that with the agency. So she wound up joining in visits with Ricky Robinson. At that point in time, They were supervised visits, and throughout the time it would go from supervised to unsupervised. And she wound up having a couple of visits. It's 2 days a week, 2.5 hours. And the transition wasn't going well. The girls would beg to go home every time they were separated. The girls would cry and just be so devastated that they had to be separated time and time again. Yet the agency didn't see a problem with that. In fact, the girls have never been abused, not until they were in the care of the county and with Norma Olivares. In fact, at a certain point, Malaika was playing with a doll and was telling the doll to sit down and shut up. Those are learned behaviors. So it's interesting to wonder who was telling her that or doing that around her to make her want to act that out with her dolls. She's even gone into, saying things like using foul language that is very concerning because her mother doesn't use that kind of language while she's around her. In fact, they put the girls through behavioral health therapy because the transition isn't going well with Norma. They don't find that to be a problem, but and as time went on, the caregivers had gone out of town to go to the Dominican Republic, which they frequent often. And during that time, the girls would be in the care of a respite caregiver that Norma selected. And during a visit, Malaika had expressed that her private area was hurting, and upon examination, it was red and swollen. And so the mother immediately told the social workers, we need to go to the hospital and get them examined for sexual assault. And from the get-go of being at the hospital, the social workers were more concerned about how long they were going to be there, the fact their supervisor was called, the police were informed, and that it was concerning that they felt like the mother wanted to put the girls through this type of such an invasive exam. Well, nobody wants to do that, but if you are not in the care of your children and they have pain and redness and swelling in their vaginal area, it is very concerning. So any parent in their right mind would want to make sure that nothing is happening. Not only is Rady's complicit, but they did not even do a sexual assault exam, therefore they could not rule it out, but the girls were diagnosed with rashes and UTI. So that is very concerning. It was a couple of months later that the mother, Evelyn Lopez, and Ricky Robinson, the grandfather, went to the Board of Supervisors to redress the government and the people that are actually head of this child trafficking network to let them know and plead for them to do the right thing. That was held against her. And it was a couple of days later that an investigator from Child Protective Services came and said that there was an investigation open due to allegations that Malaika had stated that exactly what the mother had reported on April 10th, just that event before where she was having pain in her private area and was diagnosed with a UTI. They said that Malaika had said that her mother had done that to her, that she had also seen her father and was in his car. And the interesting thing is she has not seen her dad since they've been taken. She's not spoken to him. But there was allegations that were made in April by the mother about the sexual assault. So they wound up dropping that because we brought that back up. But they ended up filing a 388 to terminate reunification because Malaika, they claim, said she saw her father. Is that a reason to terminate a family? That's bananas. No point when you read into the case files has this ever been about domestic violence. Most of the time, they're talking about being exposed, and they don't like the fact that the father and the paternal grandfather have been actively working to expose all of the fraud and the crimes against children that have been taking place in this case. And all they do is they want to put it under the umbrella of confidentiality, and they use children as a scapegoat. All of them have the same rhetoric that they use, saying that it would be detrimental to the children if they were to have a date or somebody want to date them later on, or that they're applying for a job, and if somebody goes online and sees that there is information about them having a dependency case, they could lose that date or the job. I think it's more important to expose sexual abuse that's happening and crimes against children and the fraud that you guys are engaged in for getting money for kids. This is a cash for kids scheme. That is detrimental. It is not exposing what's happened to these children, but they will hold families in contempt. They will put restraining orders against them. And that is what has happened with the father. They put a $10,000 bond out and a warrant holding him in contempt for posting online Along with the grandfather, he wound up getting a restraining order for 3 years so he can't see his grandchildren, which started out supposed to be against the guardian ad litem because that's where they wanted to go. But when they realized they had no jurisdiction to do that, no authority to do it with the guardian ad litem, they gave this information about posts being made to the caregiver, Norma Olivares, gave her the means and let her say that she's feeling unsafe when she had no idea any of that was going on. But they used the guardian ad litem, the girl's attorney, to go ahead and put this in place. When again, it was starting out because of the guardian ad litem, and Ricky had refused to take things off because it is detrimental to the girls to not expose this. So after the 388 was filed, where they are saying that they are going to terminate reunification, there was another visit, and at that time, it turned out that the caregivers were also out of town, and the girls were back in the care of the respite care givers. During that time is when Malaika had reported for the second time that her private area was hurting. She actually pulled her pants away and was saying, ouch, that hurts, and didn't want to report it because she was concerned because it was so upsetting the last time that it was reported. So we wound up going to the hospital again because Xayah had also reported that her private area hurt. And again, they were diagnosed with rashes. Okay. And at this time, it was when Rades, again, was supposed to do a sexual assault exam, which they did not. In fact, they said they asked Malaika about it, and she said nothing. But of course, a 3-year-old isn't going to report that because they're scared and they don't know who that person is. And it was after that exam, when bruises were found on Malaika's back and buttocks, that we were talking to her about what was going on. And she was reporting to her mother and I that there was a friend, an adult, a woman, someone who had long, dark hair and was dark, and her name was Gigi, would take her into a dark room. And that was all that we were able to discuss during that time because the social workers had come back in. And they actually used that, saying that I was coaching Malaika, which is not true. They never investigated it. They obstructed justice as far as this goes. And they wound up returning the girls home that day. And they have gone into supervised visits where the mother is followed into the bathroom if she wants to take the girls to the bathroom. It is very egregious what they're doing and what they are trying to manufacture here. Instead of protecting the girls, they are not. They are putting them in harm's way. Like I said, Malaika changes her behavior in front of Norma. She has behavioral changes, like she doesn't want to report that she has like an ear infection if she does. So much so that Norma will say, well, we don't need to go to the doctor, when in fact, if she's been diagnosed with an ear infection, yes, you do. I'm sorry, it is so egregious what is taking place. And now, after they did the 388 to terminate reunification, February 18th, this coming Wednesday, they are set to terminate parental rights and adopt the girls out to this caregiver and her husband. And if they do take these girls, they will go to the Dominican Republic and the girls will never be seen again. And that's what's so egregious. These girls beg and plead to go home every time they see their mother. Yet when the social workers are in the presence of the mom and the girls, and the mom is saying, I love you, and I want you to know that I will always love you. And if you don't see me again at some point, it's not because I don't love you. But they don't want us to be a family. And they'll say, don't say that. Well, what? You don't want them to know the truth? That is the truth. You are terminating. You are suggesting that this family be terminated. You're suggesting I never see my girls again. So I think it is important to make sure that they know that I'm not doing this because I don't want to see them. That it's because you guys have decided this. That's why exposure is so important. They can't stand it. And like I said, this case was never about domestic violence. This case has been because the mother decided to go to Missouri and not Mexico, and that's when they took the girls. And ever since then, they have been working diligently to manufacture a case to meet the criteria to terminate this family. And when they do that, these girls will get new birth certificates, because once you're adopted, you get a new birth certificate and they erase your past life. This is so detrimental to Malaika and Xayah. I am just asking that you guys will join us in exposing this story and bringing it to light. The mother has completed everything in her case plan. And you know what? It doesn't matter, because they will set the goalpost and keep moving it back. So once you accomplish one of those things, they say, well, we just don't feel like you've learned enough. And love isn't enough. You know, you can love your children, but that's not enough, even though they're saying the transition isn't going well and the girls have to go through behavioral health therapy. So I'm hoping that you can see that this case is completely absurd and that these girls need to be freed. And the only way to do that is to continue to expose this. We must say their names. We must share their story because this will help save them. I'm just asking you guys from the bottom of my heart that if you can just share this, if you can talk about their story, that we can bring them home, and that when this Wednesday comes, that this judge, there's a new judge that's going to be there, that she will feel a conviction upon her heart and feel like she needs to do the right thing and return Malaika and Xayah home to their loving family. They have twin siblings that are waiting to meet them. Unfortunately, the county has tried to come after them as well, and we have worked very hard to keep them safe. And so far, by the grace of God, we have. But I know that twins are a lucrative commodity in this child trafficking network. And so it's still going to be very difficult, no matter what they decide, to continue to keep these children safe and out of harm's way. Never forget, this is a battle between good and evil. What side are you guys going to be on? The side of protecting children? Or the side to be complacent and complicit because you are unwilling to speak up and speak out and say their names, share their story, and help save them? God bless you guys.